Irish fairy tales are now available at irishfairytales.com. We create beautiful keepsake kids' costumes and enchanting tales to spark little ones' imagination. Each book is sprinkled with cúpla so that parents and children can learn a couple of words in Irish together, and don't worry, they're written phonetically for those that need it, like me. These are gorgeously illustrated books and each have a message of bravery and compassion, and you can choose from either the mermaid version or the dragon version, or if you've two little ones you can get both and the stories mirror each other. And once you've read the story together, your little one can dress up in their beautiful wipe clean tale that are designed to be safe and sensory friendly, and off they go on their adventures. irishfairytales.com. Hello, I'm Stef McSherry and this is the Mum Mind podcast, the space for us to learn. So, I hope you had a good Easter break. I hope you managed to get some time off. I can't say I hope you enjoyed the weather because that seemed to be here, there and everywhere. Up and down, raining 1 minute, snowing, hail, thunder, you name it. We had it freezing cold, warm. But yeah, I hope you managed to enjoy some time off. So we are back at it and we've got some great guests lined up for you, and including, of course, today. Sarah Kelly is from PlayEasy.ie. She is a speech and language therapist. She's a mum. She was a Montessori teacher as well, which I think gives her great insights. She has her own clinic in Dublin, which you can find on SpeakEasy.ie, and she has brought out a range of toys, which I have to say are fantastic. If you are looking for first toys, chew toys, she's got like great splash toys for the bath, she's got a great puzzle cube, really great first toys, good quality ones that you can wash and wipe down that are safe for your little ones. I really recommend that you check out her shop on playeasy.ie. And for us, she's got loads of information about speech and language difficulties, when is a good time to reach out to an SLT, what you might spot, and ways to encourage language. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Mum Mind podcast, Sarah Kelly. How are you?
Good, thank you, Steph. Thank you so much for asking me to be on.
Well, believe it or not, you and I have had fairly similar journeys, but we'll get into that in a bit. So your background, was it originally Montessori teaching and then you moved into speech and language?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I didn't get the points for speech and language therapy at my leaving cert. It's it's very high.
Okay.
So I always knew I wanted to work with children, did my Montessori teaching and got a degree, and I was working in the school. And it was my sister that said to me, now you have a degree, you can go back and be a speech and language therapist. So I did the master's program in the UK. There's several of them now in Ireland. But yeah, so I did that. So I feel like it all kind of lined up, so I always knew I want to work with children. And I do specialize in early intervention. So I kind of work particularly from age 1 till about 5 or 6 personally. So I feel like it's all very linked and all very relevant to Montessori as well.
Of course. And like you had all that hands-on experience with that age group before you ever began, which I'm assuming gave you, some extra kind of kudos with them because you knew how to talk to them. You knew how to get the best out of them.
Yes, in ways, yes. I suppose I had to unlearn some things. I remember my first placement and in uni, and you had to just go into any nursery or school and just observe. And then they did a little video recording. And when I watched it back, I just noticed that all I did was ask questions. And I think sometimes that is something that we're all really guilty of in terms of our interaction style with children, is we tend to ask a lot of questions of them. And that can feel very, very testing for little ones. And if they don't have the answer, the ability to answer that question, they are often very self-aware. So one of the big things for me was changing my style of communication to modeling more statements. And it is one of the biggest things that we work on with parents in the clinic as well, is, making statements instead of asking questions.
Oh, give me an example of that then. So yeah, I can see even in my own teaching, when you go into, you ask them questions and they're often kind of very short answers. You're not giving them much room to say much at all.
Yes. I always say ask a question that you genuinely need to know the answer to, rather than just asking questions to get information. So, for example, when you're playing with little ones and they might be playing with their animals or their blocks or their cars, instead of saying, like, what's that? What are you doing? What color is it? You might say, wow, look at all the animals. I see a horse and I see a pig. And in that instance, you're giving the child the opportunity to model back or copy or imitate you, because children learn by copying. It's the foundation skill for learning language is the ability to copy. And I always give the example to adults of, if you like what someone's wearing, you'll often say, like, that's a really nice top. And they will generally reply back with where they got it from. And you don't need to ask that question. So they can feel very, very testing. And I think we're all very guilty of it. And it does take a good shift in your language style. And, I'd say use the 5 rule. For every one question, make 4 statements. So if you might say, like, what animal is your favorite? And then you might lead on with, I really like the horse. The horse says neigh. That horse is eating grass and it's brown. So you've given lots and lots of lovely opportunities for your child to copy you as well. And often we will ask a question like, would you like a snack? And that leads to a yes/no answer. So it's a closed-ended question. It doesn't give much room for language opportunity. Whereas instead you might say, would you like an apple or a banana for snack? And then you've given that choice and you've given the child the opportunity to join in and try and say the word. If they don't, it doesn't matter, but you've also modeled the language for them. So, it is a big change, and it often takes a lot of practice to change your type of style of language, but it just really, really models language in a really supportive way for little ones.
Excellent. Okay, so when do you normally start to see families? Excuse me. When do people come into you generally?
Yeah, there's a bit of a preconceived idea that we don't accept referrals until 2. Unfortunately, that comes from the public system, and that is often down to just service level capacity. So, if you go to a public health nurse, they might say, oh no, wait until 2. We actually take referrals as early as 10 months.
Wow.
Now, that often those referrals come in because that child has had maybe lots of hospital visits, or they're known to their hospital service. That could be because of prematurity, or it could be that a child has a syndrome or something like that. They have been diagnosed with, or they're in the early stages of diagnosis, and the pediatrician has flagged with them at that point that there is a delay. I suppose 10 months is very early, but if you think about it, Steph, from 4 to 6 months we get babble, and so children start really exploring with their sounds and things like that. And if they're not, that is one of those indicators that there may be a later language delay, not responding to their name, or starting to use some early gesture. And I suppose my parents might be thinking, oh gosh, I'll wait. And it is that thing of trusting your gut. I always say that to parents. When parents come in the door to the clinic, I always say to them, I'm here as a speech and language therapist, but you are the expert in your child. Yeah. And they will often know, and parents will often say to us, like, I was worried for a long time, but I kept being told, oh no, wait, or they're just a boy, or they're whatever position they are within the family. And, regardless if they're the oldest or the youngest, they should still meet their milestones as expected.
Okay.
If there is a family history as well, Steph, so if there is a family member, a parent or a child that's also had a language delay, that child is more at risk of having a language delay. And it doesn't mean when you come to us or come to me for an assessment that you're going to need therapy. Sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes it's let's give you some strategies and advice and come back in a few months, or let's do 2-3 sessions, so it's always very, very tailored to the individual needs of the child. So yeah, the earlier we get in, the better. So we know the brain is neuroplastic until 3, which means that we can make new connections and new pathways much easier. It doesn't mean that we can't learn new skills past 3. It's just easier. And how I describe that to parents is, if you go into a built-up area or city and you try and build new roads, it just involves a lot more planning. If you went into a really, really rural area of fields and land and nothing much else, to make that road, it's much easier. And that's how the brain is up until 3. Those pathways and connections are easier to build.
That's really good explanation, and a really kind of clear clear picture as to why early intervention for lots of things is really essential, and we're really lacking in that in this country, but we'll get onto that. You mentioned the delay part there, and I guess if you're a first time mum and you've got nothing to compare it to, and you know the kind of window that words should start to come, what do you class as a delay?
So yeah, it's the early babble milestone is the first big one that we look at.
Okay.
We expect first words in and around about one, but honestly, in that first year of a little one's life, they are achieving and developing so many skills. So you're thinking about, their ability and their motor ability, their feeding. So we don't just look at words at one. We're looking at, are they responding to their name? Are they showing some understanding? So if you say, where's mama or where's dada, are we looking around the room looking for them? The early babble is a big one, and also some early gestures. So children learn by copying. There's two types of imitation. So there's the imitation of gesture and action on an object, and that predicts play skills. So if you come in and you've got a toy and there's a car at the top and you push it down the track, and your little one joins in and copy you, that's what predicts play. But the imitation of gesture and action is what predicts language. So big one, in and around 10, 12 months, lots of gesture coming, the ability to point. It's a really important communication and cognitive skill. And by 16 months, we're looking for 16 gestures. So I suppose it's not really the words. That's what I call the tip of the iceberg. It's generally the one that's most visible to parents. And when they come into the clinic, I'll say, okay, let's look at all the skills. How are they playing? How are they interacting with you? Are they initiating play? Are they, and that all that can be done non-verbally, and they're really important. Gesture is a big one. So yeah, it's more than words that we look at. We're looking at the overall play, interaction, and understanding of language as well.
And the communication part, that I'm picturing a little one kind of doing that first wave when you go or when you say hello and things like
or
that.
clapping their hands when they're excited. A hip hip hooray, or putting your hands on your tummy for And that's also a really important thing, Steph, is what counts as a word. So gestures count as a word once they are used consistently and appropriately in context. So if someone comes in the door, they wave, we're like, that's a hello. We're going to count that as a word.
Okay.
And symbolic sounds count as a word. So that's things like animal noises. So if a child says moo, we count that as a word once it's being used in the context of the cow, and they're doing it spontaneously. So we start to look at, okay, was that an imitated word or a spontaneous word? And that's important. So I do always ask parents to keep a note on their phone, because when you come to an appointment like that, you're always nervous, and it's hard in the moment to think about it. So I've documented all the boys' journeys just because for me it's so interesting, but it's so helpful when you go to an appointment and you're asked. Because the public health nurses often send out these questionnaires called the ages and stages questionnaires. And honestly, they're so in-depth, they almost often freak me out for even me as a parent, but it is really helpful. So like, for example, Callum now is 21 months. And he's got lots of animal signs and things like that. He doesn't use a lot of the words yet, but because he's using them in context, they are counted as a word, so that is important too. And also important to mention about bilingual children. Parents will often think, oh, if my child is exposed to more than one language, is that a risk for language delay? It absolutely isn't. There's no research and no evidence behind that stuff. But what we do know is they will often look like they've got less vocabulary, because they might say a word like hello in English and in Spanish. But if they do it in both languages, it counts as two words.
Okay.
So yes, we look at milestones like by 2 years of age, we're looking for 50 words. That is the milestone. The average child at that age will have between 150 and 250 words. And it's important to say that, because if you've got a 2-year-old and they're in and around the 30 words, you might be thinking, oh, they're close to 50. But I would always err on the side of caution and opt to seek a referral just to make sure.
And it's lovely that you've mentioned kind of the whole child, because I know my son got a referral for speech and language, which was for sounds primarily, those R's and the S's that aren't quite right. He was in and around 3 or 4, but they flagged other things. The SLT flagged other things that they noticed that I hadn't noticed. So I think looking at that whole child is really valuable for a parent.
And it often is that thing of, there's not many words there, but then we might look and think, okay, the play isn't where it's supposed to be. Let's work on the play skills. The children learn through play. Or they're not following those simple instructions. So if they're not following those simple instructions, how can they be mapping the words onto it? So yes, it is. It is that tip of the iceberg where parents often see the lack of words or the lack of clarity of words, but then it's up to us. Or maybe attention is a little bit reduced. And if attention's reduced, then they're less likely to be able to focus and listen and hear the language. So it's very much looking at the whole child. And, we do try and frame it in, like, the child will always have strengths and always maybe rooms for areas of development. And it's up to us to find their strengths too, because it's not just about what your child can't do. It's like, okay, they might not be saying words, but they're actually really good at initiating with you non-verbally. They're really getting about their day, doing really, really well. So it is always very much about seeing their strengths and seeing the areas and room for development as well, because all children have different strengths, or maybe they're really agile, and we often find that with the kiddies we work with, they're incredibly good climbers and really good motor skills and incredibly coordinated, and that is a strength as well. And, we need them to be able to use their motor ability to copy the gestures, which is a foundation skill for learning language. So it all is these kind of stepping stones that we need to build up on.
And when it comes to those more, I guess, what I would think of for speech and language, those, like I mentioned for my son, the sounds, I'm assuming a lot of kids come to you, but I think there's an age range as well where they kind of grow out, or they can grow out of it. Is that right?
Yeah, like we expect children to be 100% intelligible to unfamiliar listeners by 4. So go back to 3, we're in about 75%, and 2, 50%. So that's like grannies or wider family members that don't see them as often. And of course, in those situations, if a child starts talking to a granny about something like Paw Patrol, they don't have that background knowledge, that might need a little bit of support. But yes, there is a big developmental jump in terms of their clarity of speech from like between 2 and 3, really. And then there's a huge jump from 3 to 4. So yes, there's stages to it all. But I suppose, comparison is the thief of joy, but sometimes it is those classes and you think, oh gosh, that child's in a similar age, and then it's about just not letting it spiral, but knowing, okay, let's go and find out some information. Where am I expecting my child to be? Getting your information from reputable sources as well is a huge thing. So, speech and language therapists are CORU registered. Don't get your advice from someone that's not a specialist in communication. People will say I'm an expert in X, Y, and Z, but, speech and language therapists need to be CORU registered. And I do try and kind of share tips and advice on my page and things like that around supporting language and what is, when we step back, Steph, and think like, what is the fundamentals of communication? And it's a reciprocal interaction. It's a back and forth exchange. So long, long, long before children ever have words, we need to get into that mentality. So from birth, you pause for their turn. We call it a serve and return, or like a game of tennis. So, if you're chatting to your baby from birth, you might say something to them. You're using that lovely sing-song melodic tone, but then you give a lovely big pause. What do they do? Do they wriggle their body? Do they move their head? Do they smile? Do they try and open their eyes? And that is really what builds the back and forth. And the foundation, so the architecture in the brain for language is that back and forth. So when my youngest was born, Callum, there was a 5-year age gap between him and my next son, and another 3 years. And that's, everyone asked me, and that's the only tip I gave my boys was, if you're singing a song or you're talking to him, just give a big, big pause in the middle of it, just to allow him to take his turn. And that turn is really often like a non-verbal, a move in the body, a kick at the feet. And that's what builds the architecture in the brain for language. And it's the most important skill. So language modeling is great, but you have to pause.
Well, and I can imagine by the time you get to baby number 3, there's so many voices and so many bits of noise around. It's very hard to make that pause.
It is. Oh, it's really difficult. And it's something we revisit all the time, like especially meal times. It's one of the times that we all sit down together and we all make sure we take our turn, and reminders of, when Finn is talking, Ollie is listening, and, and that will always carry on. I mean, Finn's 10 now, so it is that thing that we kind of have to revisit all the time, is that turn taken within the family and how important it is that we listen to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really key. And
And
it can,
mine are 12 and 14, and same at the dinner table. It's still, no, 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 so and so's still talking. Let's listen to what they're saying, because
yeah,
sometimes at that age they've got so many opinions and they want to share so much that they're talking
yeah,
over
they
the
get
top of.
excited.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
or something, even news time yesterday, and one of the boys was sharing something excited, and one of the other boys wanted to join in and share, and I was like, it's actually not your story to tell. I can see you're really excited, and I
yeah.
see you really want to share, but let's let Ollie tell it first, and then you can tell us what you want to share about it. But it is that thing, and it is really important, and it's hard to get right, and it doesn't always work, of course, and it ends up with the rise and everything like that. But communication is that back and forth, and that serve and return is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. Talk to me about your journey into starting a product, which I know from experience in the last 6 months is not an easy journey.
No.
So I
I
need, like, even you have this lovely idea. You think, oh, I'd love to do this, but like, where do you start?
It started in a kind of like when I opened the clinic, first of all, in 2020. I was renting in a GP practice, and I moved all my stuff in. And the following week, the whole country shut down for
Mm.
COVID. And I just pivoted at the time, and I just started to create toy boxes. So I branded toy boxes, but I popped in toys that you could buy anywhere, Amazon, those kind of things. But I wrote a booklet with how to use the toys to support communication. And that was the big piece. And it was doing really, really well, and everything was going well. But things like there was more and more channels for people to buy toys, and I just couldn't compete with the prices. So there's all the extra brand or the extra places now and platforms to buy toys. So in 2024, I restarted the shop and rebranded into Play Easy and started to design my own products. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's not been an easy one. It's been a learning. Like, not everything I started branding. I started with one or two toys, and now I'm kind of almost at the stage where nearly all my toys are my own brand, my own design, and my own idea. And when you're doing that, you have to order in such big quantities because it's your own product. So generally, it's 1,000 pieces at a minimum. And you don't know until you bring a product to market if it's going to sell or not. So yeah, it's been a huge learning curve. It's definitely starting to really take off. Like, Banana Buddy is like my best seller, and I'm really struggling now to keep that in stock. So I have this whole supply demand issue.
Which is a
Which
good problem to have.
yes,
Yes.
but I absolutely love it. And I really wanted to take the stress out of it in a way for parents, because I feel like there's so many toys on the market.
Mm.
It's a little bit overwhelming. And I think parents now more than ever are very aware about products that are supporting their baby's development, or, they don't have a huge amount of time. And, I will never take away from the fact that no toy will teach your child how to talk. It's the interaction with you that's fundamental to it. But of
Yes.
course, we want lovely tools to add on that are fun, and they're engaging, and they're multisensory. So we know the more senses we can engage the baby, the more they will learn. So that's what I've done. None of my toys have lights or music in them, because again, that can take away from too much of the interaction. I literally saw a reel on Instagram this morning from a speech and language therapist, and she's sharing all these toys, and there was so many lights and things like that. She was like, they're so overwhelming
Mm.
for little ones that there is no space for us to join in, because this toy takes away completely. So that is the way I go about it, and the feedback has been really positive. And when I think about multisensory, it's different textures. There's bells in them, there's squeakers in them, there's rattles, there's teethers, because babies initially are oral sensory seekers. They learn most through their mouth. So yeah, most of my toys are kind of in the younger age category at the moment. I would love to develop the range, but of course that has to be slow and steady. You need
Yeah.
funding and things like that. So yeah, one day at a time, I suppose.
And so a lot of these, yeah, like you said, they're kind of, I've written down here, you've got like chew toys, first
Yeah,
toys, you've got the banana buddies, you've got those gorgeous splash pals and the
yeah,
puzzle one. But these are, like you said, kind of parent-child interactive toys, as in
yes,
you are helping, you are modeling, you're taking a turn, they're taking a turn, that kind of thing.
yeah. The splash pads are my bath toys. So they're made from food grade silicone and BPA free. So they're really safe for little ones. The thing about bath toys is that they get filled with mold. So these can
Mm,
open to clean. So you can pop them in the top rack of your dishwasher or your sterilizer.
brilliant.
Because they are really soft silicone, it means that smaller babies can squeeze the water out of themselves. So traditional bath toys, the rubber is quite hard, so
That
that means
hard, plasticky feel. Yeah.
to develop the muscles in their hand. Obviously, they can chew them. And then because of my speech out background, I've gone with the theme of animals, and I've gone for two zoo animals and two farm animals. So we've got early language categorizing. Then you can model the sound. So for the cow, you can do moo. For the giraffe, you can do
I was
for
going to
each.
say, what noise does a giraffe
No, no,
make?
no, you do the gesture of
Oh,
that.
okay.
So again, before children will say the word giraffe, which is a really tricky word, it's two syllables, they might do that. And that's what Callum, my son, does. And they'll say moo for the cow. So yeah, always there's room for language development. And like you said, that pause. So the one simple one I might do is squeeze the water, and I'll do ready, steady, and I'll do a big pause before go. And they might look at me and smile, and then we'll do go. And over time, eventually you want them to join in and say the word go. And
Yeah.
it might be an approximation, or it might be an O sound, or one of the things I'll do is I'll plop, I'll put them at the side of the bath, and I'll do 1, 2, 3, and then I'll pop them in, or I might say jump or splash. So it's all those kind of language opportunities that really make that really enhance the play activity. And like opportunities at the bath are wonderful for language development stuff. You're face to face with your little one.
Yeah.
And the more face to face opportunity you can get, the more it benefits language. They can see your mouth move, they can see your facial expressions, they can see your gesture. So I love things like your everyday routines for language development, your bath time, your meal time, you're in the car, you're in the buggy, you're in the trolley. These are really, really easy opportunities to map the language on.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, would you use like a lot of songs and rhymes and
Yeah,
things like that? Yeah.
yeah.
I'm picturing
Always
Twinkle
singing.
Twinkle and things
Yeah,
like that.
or
Yeah.
make up I'll take the tune. Like even the song The Farmers in the Dell, I use that for changing time. So like your nappy goes on your bum, your nappy goes on your bum. Hey ho my daddy o. Your shoes go on your feet. Your shoes go on your feet. So as well as that, I use those because it makes that routine very familiar. If you think about when children are born, they don't really understand the routine. So I
Mm.
have a good morning song, I have a bedtime song, I have a song for nappy changes, I have a song for putting on our coat. And then they start to become predictable, and the little ones, like, they associate. Okay, this is the
Yeah.
good morning song. I know I'm getting up. This is Twinkle Twinkle. I know this is my cozy nighttime song. So it helps them to understand the language and map those songs onto those routines. So yeah, singing songs is so powerful. It also gives the opportunity for more gesture. And we know that the more gesture we have, they count as words as well. They're easier for little ones to join in. What I always say to parents when singing songs is to watch your pace and how quickly you sing them. So if you think about Steph, if you go to a country where you don't know the language, it's very hard for you to pick out where one word starts and one word ends. It's just this wall of sound. And that's what it's like for our little ones when they're learning language. So the slower you can sing it, it really helps them to isolate the word. When they know the song, you start to pause at the end of the word for the rhyming words, so the end of the sentence. So twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. So then you're indirectly teaching the concept of rhyme, which helps speech and later literacy development. So it's so good. Parents often ask me about things like Little Baby Bum and there's another one that does the lovely songs. And what I always say is slow it down. So on YouTube or on your TV, there's a little cog, the settings cog. If you press that, you can reduce the speed to 0.75.
Oh,
And
wow,
I
I
think
didn't
that
know
makes
that.
a really big difference. Just in slowing it down for them, because I think it's often quite fast.
Yes.
Um,
And
but
they
yeah,
love those songs.
oh, they love them.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's how we're teaching body parts: head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Icky Sticky Bubble Gum is another gorgeous song for teaching body parts. I've developed a range of finger puppets. They're coming in the next 2 months, and there's four of them. One is a bunny for the Hop Sleeping Bunny song.
Yeah.
One is for five cheeky monkeys jumping in the bed. One is a rocket for Zoom, 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 we're going for the moon. And one is bubblegum for Icky Sticky Bubblegum. So using
Amazing.
these objects to teach the songs, and these ones are ones that I chose specifically because there's so much language opportunity in them. So yeah, singing is amazing, but don't be afraid to make up your own.
Well, and it sets them up. I was thinking Montessori preschool, we use
Yeah,
songs for all those, line up,
yeah.
everybody, everywhere, all those kind of things.
Breakfast time, snack time.
Yeah,
And it's just a brilliant way of teaching me vocabulary. teaching the concept of rhyme, which is so important for pronunciation and literacy, teaching them the gestures, but children learn through repetition. So that repetition makes it really easy for them to join in. And it doesn't matter about your singing voice. It's just not about that. I also think it's like your superpower in a way. Like if you sing to your baby from a young age, they will calm with it. So like if I'm in the traffic and he's we're getting a kick off, I'll start to bring in the songs I know he likes, or if we're waiting in a queue at the supermarket, and just things like that when you need to buy yourself a little time. I just think it's so incredibly powerful. And lots of them teach lovely concepts like Zing 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 Through the Moon. I love it because at the end that blast off teaches that anticipation, the wait, and then the big. So sometimes then if you need to use counting for another way to wait, because you need them to wait a minute, you can do, okay, we need to wait. It's mummy's turn, because my kids love the Hoover when they're younger, and I do the 5 word. So it teaches lots and lots of lovely skills indirectly.
You mentioned some of the YouTube stuff there. I'm assuming Miss Rachel you would be a fan of too. Apart from maybe the accent, does the accent matter?
Necessarily. I mean, I didn't have Miss Rachel for any of my other kids, but we started it obviously with Callum being our last little boy, and I loved it because I loved that there was an interaction with a face,
Yes.
But I think it's that it's not going to do all the interaction skills you want, because the pause mightn't be long enough, and you can see then what your child likes, Miss Rachel, and you can do more of that essentially. So it is a great tool, but it's not in isolation enough, if that makes sense. But yeah, there's another one. Oh, Super Simple Songs. I love Super Simple Songs. Really nice songs, loads of lovely rhymes. And it's just about slowing them down, but then it's noticing the ones your little one likes and doing more of them outside of your TV time.
Yes.
Or things like that. Yeah.
Because I think it's important that you mention Miss Rachel's face, because a lot of those baby bum and things, they're lovely cartoony graphics, but there's no face. So I'm assuming if you're trying to mimic either facial expressions or movements of your mouth and things like that, and they can't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is, I have to mention that it has to be in moderation with screen time. All my kids are exposed to screen time, but we're getting more and more research and evidence to how much and the impact and things like that. So it is great. Like there is other programs that I know of, and it's more mine, and I'm like, oh, I don't love the Masha and the Bears one, and kids often come to me. There's a new one on Netflix at the moment of dinosaurs. There's no words in it. It's all mime and sound. So in terms of that, that's just really overstimulating sound and light and colours, really.
You mean nobody's talking?
No, there's like miming noises and sounds every so often. So yes, but yeah, it has to be moderation. What I do say as well is there are days where you're just like, I can't do this. I'm really tired, and it's okay to allow yourself that. If you can make your TV time interactive, that is incredible. So like you're sitting together and you are extending the language around it, or if the child copies that, you give that praise or reinforce it, So, if the child, there's a song that Miss Rachel does up and down, and they go down, you're like, down, yay! So you've reinforced, they know what they've done, you've reinforced the language. So I think it's just that, like, to allow yourself days where you just think, I can't parent today and I need to fill my own cup. And that's totally fine. And I think we're all human at the end of the day. And there are going to be days and there's more. And I think it's just when you have that awareness, you can balance it. So I think there is a lot of pressure, but don't beat yourself up. Also, we're all doing our best, and I think your best is good enough.
Yeah, and especially in these kind of times, I feel a lot of parents are completely overwhelmed by the world, let alone what's going on in their own house. And I think, like you said, we give ourselves a little bit of a break. I think that's important to say.
Yeah, and just try and, carve out a few minutes every day where you are completely present. So that is, the TV is not on in the background or the radio is not in the background, because young children can't filter out background noise like you and I. So even if they're not watching the TV and it's your program or they're not, they will find it more difficult to tune that out. So 5 minutes, turn off the TV, turn off the radio, turn your phone on silent or do not disturb, and get in front of your little one and spend 5 minutes and watch what they do and join in with them. Because sometimes we will join in with our little ones with a preconceived idea of how that play should look. But if you pause for a minute and watch what your child does and then join in, you're more likely to capture their interest because you're following what they like. And if you map language on to what they're doing, they're also more likely to listen and join in because they're motivated by it. So I was like, there's a set of stacking cups on my desk here. You know, your idea of those stacking cups is that they build with them. But your little one might roll it, or you know, they might look at it and then you might do peekaboo, or you might put one in your head and do achoo. So just lose your idea of how the play should look and join in and copy them. There's always room to extend their play, add on to their play and teach them play, but it just really, really, really enhances the learning when you copy them a little bit. And that is often something we do when little ones are not joining an imitation readily. I'm like, let's copy them. So, you know, if they're banging the feet off the ground, we're going to do the same. And then you get them, they're kind of looking at you and you get that back and forth going. And then you can maybe join in and add something on. But if your child is not doing the imitation that you want, to start by copying them. It's really, really, really powerful for any child at any stage. You know, when we look at play therapy strategies, they talk an awful lot about special time. And in that special time, it's your undivided attention that it's their ideas, it's what they want to do. You just join in, you comment a lot. You don't say things like, well done, but you might say, I can see you're really working hard to build that tower. So it's all those lovely strategies. So it's really important in terms of mental health. And it's also fabulous for language.
And I'm guessing that can start, like because I know some parents find the idea of play completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
They feel silly, they feel self-conscious. So why not start with either the changing table or the bath time or the food time, and you know, make that your one-on-one time where you're doing a few songs with the hand actions, because maybe that's less daunting than, oh gosh, now we've got to sit and play.
I agree. And children need to be able to play with people before toys. So people play is so powerful. Tickles, peekaboo, you know, things like that, you know, rubbing on cream and, you know, talking about the body parts, or a nice song if your child needs moisturizer after the bath. Absolutely. And it's interesting because my husband and I talk about this a lot. Like his way of interacting with the boys would be very different. Like he's not the traditional sit down puzzles, but he loves getting outside with them. He loves going on the bikes. He loves going to a coffee shop. He loves getting out and like looking for things in nature. And I think that's also really valuable. So it doesn't need to look that way, but it is that way of like, if you are in the park and you are on the swing and, you know, that you're face to face with them, that your phone is in your pocket and you just have that moment and you can really build in the ready, steady, go there and the pausing and the turns and what can I hear? I hear the birds, and you know, so absolutely. But people play is the most fun, and kids get so much enjoyment out of the most simple things like hiding behind a door and knocking. Like it's you know, it's
the hide and seek when they're small and but they don't hide. They think they're hiding, and they're you know, stood next to something.
And it's also the most like you feel amazing as well. Yeah. The most. Dropping something off a high chair, like a little toy off a high chair, or banging in the high chair and they copy you, or like, you know, often the trickle of the fingers across off the table and they look at you and they're like, they try and copy. And it's the really simple, basic things. Like, honestly, the putting of something on your head and doing a chew, the putting your jumper, like before you put jumpers on and doing peekaboo, or I did the nappy. I always put a nappy on my head. We're doing changing time and I'll do chew. And now, like, Callum will pull the nappy out for me to do it and he'll do chew, you know, so it doesn't need to be fancy play activities and things like that. What I often will say, though, is if you are thinking about play, think about an invitation to play, and it can be so simple, but so easy. So, for example, if you have a bag full of animals or a bag full of cars and they're just sitting there, okay, there's a bag. But if you set out 3 or 4 of them, just a simple way, honestly, it will capture them. Like I remember doing simple things like during COVID, that takes me back, but like I put out the teddies and I put books in their hand, or I put out teddies with a piece of food, or teddies with a cup or a bowl, and that will spark play. The simplest invitation to play. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be a sensory activity or a bowl or a tray or rice or pasta, but just honestly taking the toys out of the box, or, you know, even with the stacking cups, if you stack up 3 or 4 of them and leave the rest of them out, that's a lovely little invitation play, and that can really spark play with you or with your child as well.
And that can be less intimidating for them, because I'm assuming if you're lucky enough to have a playroom and it's bursting with stuff and you go off, you go and play, it's like, oh, where do I start? Whereas if you pull one or two things out and have them there, it's much
Absolutely.
easier for them to get
Yeah.
involved.
People often talk about toy rotation, but of course that is really dependent on space.
Mm.
So I don't have the ability to do toy rotation, but what I do is like that, take out things like the train set and set up the train and put one train on and leave some bits to fix it or finish it.
Yeah.
So I don't do everything because they might have a different idea or they might want the train track to go in a different way. And then I do often put a bag of toys away for a little while, like in my wardrobe or something, and they're the toys that I bring on holidays, or they're the transition toys that I use. So if you've got a little one that struggles with transition, so transitioning from a preferred activity like the park or the pool or soft play or a friend's house, I will often have a bag of toys that I put away so that they're just used for transition. So they're highly novel.
Oh,
And it
this
can be,
this is gold. So, okay, this is something you literally only get out when you're needing
only,
them to move from one thing to
yeah,
another.
yeah, yeah,
I wish I'd
absolutely.
known that little gem when mine was smaller.
And I'll often just go into places like, things that you can buy, little cheap toys that are like a wind up or a squishy or whatever your child is interested in. But and transitions have been really difficult for one of my boys. And I remember swimming lessons was so tricky. So we do the timer, like there's going to be 5 minutes left and then it's time to play at the pool. And then when time's up, let's go and see what toy mummy has in the bag today. Like, honestly, and it doesn't need to be expensive or fancy, but it's just things that you put away and they're only used for the transitions. And it can be such a huge difference.
Yeah, and I'm thinking with little ones starting preschool or finding that hard,
Yeah,
I'm going to have, and it, like you said, doesn't have to be new, but something that you only save for that time. I just think that's absolute gold.
yeah, it's brilliant. It served me really well, and
Yeah.
it still continues to. I still use it with my kids all of the time.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking about some of those you were talking about, like clapping hands games and songs, how much they served me when we were in places like a restaurant
Yes.
or, places where I didn't want to give them a phone or a device, but I wanted them to be entertained because we were waiting for food or whatever. Those little songs and games that you can just do with your hands.
And even little ones, games like I Spy, but adapted, like,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be
Colours.
letter. I see something in the room that you can eat and it's got
Yeah.
sprinkles on it. It
Yeah.
just gets, and it's so good for language. But yeah, all those little games. What can I hear? What can I see? What can I smell? And visuals all the way to help little ones. They're so useful. So if you've got a child that struggles, drawing out what's going to happen, or using a favorites album on your phone, because with those transitions again for us, when those transitions are tricky, the ability to process language and rationalize has just gone out the windows. So I used to show a picture of my favorites album of let's go home and get your favorite toy or your favorite teddy, or showing
Mm.
them the visual really helps in those instances. Or like one of my boys, he didn't like getting his blood pressure taken as something he had to do. And so I used to draw it out for him. I used to use the little drawing tablets that I have in the shop. So like I draw like you're going to sit and count for 5. You're going to hold mummy's hand and you're going to do your deep breaths or whatever it was. And just like on his lap, revisiting those visuals, because visuals stay in place all the time. Whereas when you talk to kids and then the message is gone.
Yeah.
So visuals are also a really, really useful tool that I use all the time. And they don't need to be fancy. It can be a piece of paper and a pen, a photo on your phone, whatever it is. It really helps your little one to understand what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah, the photo on the phone is a good one. I'm thinking of like a favourite teddy at home or whatever. Come on, we're going to go and see
Yeah.
Ted, that kind of thing. Really
Yes.
helpful. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And a favorites album, you can access them really easily as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gold dust. Thank you.
No problem.
I'm always mindful of people that perhaps can't afford private SLT
Works.
sessions. So, what is the system? Where do you start if you have a concern with your little one?
Yes. So speech and language therapy is an open referral system. So you don't need to go to your GP for public or private. So you just need to ring your local health centre and ask them for a referral form. That is stuff. It really, really, really depends on. It's like a postcode lottery in a sense now. Like
Okay.
it just depends on your area and location. Some clinics do have a drop-in clinic. So that's like on like a certain month, like a first Wednesday of every month, and you can go and drop in. It's a really useful service that people can drop in and know and might get strategies.
Mm.
Excuse me. You can go to your public health nurse. They can also often give you tips and ideas while you're waiting. And also like places like my Instagram or other speech and language therapists will
Yes.
often give you tips and ideas. Like that one about gesture, or like that one about pausing for your turn. I generally, if parents will, if they send me a DM and they send me, like, I can't answer specific queries, but if they give me a bit of information, I can often send them on a couple of videos.
Yeah.
And those things can be really useful, but it's not getting into the like mindlessly scrolling, looking at everyone else's, getting your information from X, Y, and Z. And that's the thing, when you have too much information, you actually do nothing.
Yes.
So like, in my advice is always to try one thing at a time, try one strategy, getting face to face or singing your nursery rhymes slower, so it's reducing your questions. Try one thing at a time, because otherwise your interactions will become like, I'm trying to reduce my questions, and it just becomes so unnatural. Children learn.
Overwhelming, just for you as a parent. Yeah.
Children learn when they're having fun.
Yeah.
Like, that is the bottom line. If they're at that optimum level of laughing, enjoying, they're learning. If they're dysregulated, if they're upset, if they're stressed, they're worried, they're not at the optimum for learning, so forget about it. So it is that thing of try one thing at a time, and remember you're doing your best. And then, yes, it's like some waiting lists are like 2 years long. So it's really, really tricky. In terms of accessing private as well, it is important to note that there's you can get a health insurance policy for just your child, and it costs around €45 per month, and they can claim 75% back. So it's a huge amount, and then you can also claim 20% on the remainder on your revenue medical expenses. So when parents come to us, we will always check, like, are you have a health insurance policy, and do you want to get one? Because like, €45 a month, and you don't need to insure your whole family. There's also no waiting time.
Yeah, and in my experience, OTs, SLTs, they know the ins and outs of those health policies. They know which ones will cover most of the fees. So talk to them before you renew. And this is the time of the year that everyone's renewing.
Yeah. So physio, OT, speech and language therapy, dietitians, and then psychology often as well. So yeah, it does really help, and we do try and make sure, which is how our families can keep coming back.
Yeah.
Is to get them on the right health insurance policy. And it makes a huge difference. It really, really does.
Unbelievable. Thank you so much. I just want to flag, so playeasy.ie is where people can buy the toys, and SpeakEasy SLT.ie is where people can find you and your beautiful clinic.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's it.
And your Instagram, which is what's your Instagram? Because that's got loads of playeasy.ie, because there's loads of lovely bits and pieces on there. So even if you do have kind of 5-10 minutes to scroll through there and have a look and pick out things that you might try over the next week or so without putting too much pressure on yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Sarah, thanks so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Steph.